Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, CBS Sports NWSL lead writer, joined today by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, NWSL analyst and play-by-play announcer. We've got an NWSL weekend preview and other league updates to go through today. But first, I just wanted to remind everyone that you can all find us on Twitter at Attacking Third and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you find your podcast, and to please go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. We would like to hear from you. So if you leave us a 5-star review, you can ask us a question and we might go ahead and answer that on one of our episode segments. So go ahead and find us, leave us a review, and leave us a question if you'd like. Lisa, how are you doing today? Let's get in it.
Sandra, I'm doing pretty good. It's a day to chat with you, and that always makes me happy. And talk about some things happening in the league, in the NWSL, look ahead to some games ahead. Should be a pretty busy weekend. I'm traveling. I'll be calling some of these games. Tune in, listen to me on the air. Slight plug for me, Paramount Plus broadcasts. I will be there. Fun stuff. So I'm prepping and packing my suitcase for those games. But Sandra, how are you? I love the tie-dye.
Thank you. I'm feeling very summery today. Love the plug. I am ready to get into all of it. Lengthy weekend, so therefore it will be a lengthy episode, quite possibly, because it's not just a regular preview segment for us. We wanted to lead off the top of our podcast segment with some news, because news always breaks at many different times of the day, of the hour for the league, quite frankly. And we are just going to roll into it. If you joined us for our previous episode, part of that was talking about some news and notes around the league. And there was an announcement from the Washington Spirit about head coach Richie Burke, that he stepped down from his position as the head coach of Washington Spirit and had been reassigned to the Spirit front office in regards to ongoing health concerns that were brought up to the president and owner of the Washington Spirit. So this was an initial release that was put out. We recorded a podcast segment about it, and since then, some developments have taken place. Since this statement, a story in the Washington Post has been released talking about some allegations around head coach Richie Burke, and a new statement was released by the Spirit in regards to this new report. So there is currently an ongoing investigation around all of these allegations and potentially a toxic environment from this particular head coach around the Washington Spirit. So we wanted to make sure that our listeners were up to date with the most current news within all of this happening, because at the time of our previous recording, we only had that prior statement, which has was released again as on the Washington Spirit site, and has since apparently been deleted. Lisa, but a wild kind of news cycle for the league, indeed.
Very wild. And you mentioned the press release. The initial press release for the Washington Spirit has been taken down. Their initial tweet is still out there with the statement, but it takes you to a 404 page, unavailable. So just news develops really quickly, and we're trying to stay on top of it as best as we can. And we felt it was just so pertinent to come back and circle back on this story now that we know more information, and all of the allegations that have come out, and how things are unfolding in this league and with this team. There's just so much to unpack here. And out of the allegations, Kayamcculla is one of the players that has stepped forward, and I think that she deserves a big hug and a big, I don't know, a light shown on her, because it's not easy to step forward with these allegations and be the voice and be the face of allegations of harassment in this league or anywhere. So for her to come forward and speak truthfully about this situation is really big, and it shows a lot of courage and strength.
Absolutely. I don't think that's should be toned down at all. I think it's a very brave moment, for a person to step into the light, basically. and it's a heavy light. There can be a lot of risk, quite frankly, in doing that. And again, credit to the article out in the Washington Post if people can go check that out and get more informed. But within that, it does uh, stem from Kaya McCullough starting to talk about her experiences there. But within the article, there are also, players who spoke on the basis of anonymity. So, not wanting to, essentially expose themselves. And, we have to look at that as a whole. That while there is someone going on record, there are also others who, still have a fear of potentially doing that, and that's always a huge cause for concern. But still want to commend them really for their bravery as well. And it's tough. It's even tough to sort of be on a women's soccer podcast and sort of have to look at these players and and point at them and call them brave. I would hate to have this type of scenario be where it's like you're looking at somebody talking about trauma and pointing at it as brave when actually it would be really great if players didn't have to go through trauma at all. So it's just tough. Um Again, the investigation is ongoing within this very chaotic kind of news cycle. There was also the announcement amongst media that there was a press conference availability with NWSL Commissioner Lisa Baird that obviously took a different tone. When that was announced, it was at the time when the initial Spirit press release had gone out referring to Burke's, ongoing health concerns and stepping down and be reassigned to the front office. So that initial press conference with Lisa Baird was maybe going to have a different tone and probably be something that was like a mid-season check-in and welcoming the return of Olympic athletes to the season. And obviously it was a much different feeling, Lisa.
Yeah, that availability with the media and the commissioner, because of everything that had happened with the Washington Spirit and the new allegations against former head coach Richie Burke. What was the response from the league, the NWSL, and Commissioner Lisa Baird? What was their response to the Washington Spirit and the allegations that had come to the surface?
Well, the commissioner came out and addressed all of all of the news coming out at the top of her press conference and just made kind of an opening statement to address that right off the bat. Um, and essentially echoed the new statement that the Washington Spirit had released was that based on being contact the night prior from a Washington Post reporter that they immediately decided to launch an investigation into the allegations of their head coach in Richie Burke. And Lisa Bear just reemphasized that statement, echoing similar verbiage, saying, based on the credible reporting that's out there, they are going to be in compliance with that. And she did also shed light within the media availability that all of this is being done via a third party, and that they're going to await the results of those investigations.
Which is we've seen in the past, things in the league or things that have come up, they tend to push that or put it on an outside party, so there's no bias and nothing like that going into it. But I'm sure there were other things talked about in this meeting besides just this. I mean, there's only so much information out right now about this situation and what's going on, and the fact that there is an investigation underway. And I'm sure more answers will come probably as soon as we finish recording this podcast, Sandra, which is fine. It's okay as long as we get some answers. But other things that I'm sure that media availability, like yourself, asked of the NWSL commissioner. Just some other questions that I have that I'm sure our listeners do as well. The refereeing this year in the
Yeah.
NWSL has been questionable. Was this brought up at all?
Yeah, absolutely. A good colleague of ours over at Backline Soccer in Charles only actually presented a really good question to the commissioner about the refereeing. And, it was an important question to bring up because we're in the halfway point of the season. And there's been a lot of discussion about the officiating in this league. And quite frankly, it's also sentiment that has been stemming from seasons prior. Let's be frank here. The pro referees that are issued to the league or assigned to the league, excuse me, there's a process in that. And then even if you look, I believe it's on the U.S. soccer site, if I'm remembering correctly, like which officials do get, or which types of officials do get assigned to these NWSL league matches. And, the NWSL is categorized as a secondary league. So they get a certain type of officiating within these matches. So I think some of the games that took place over the weekend, and when we recap them on our episode, in particular that Orlando and Chicago game, when you're watching a match happen and two players are coming out for one specific side and people are looking for sort of accountability, and the yellow cards that are issued are to the bench of the players who are being subbed out, like there's a level of frustration, I imagine, coming out, not just from the team, but people who are viewing the game as well. So there's Lisa Baird was pretty open about the fact that it's a level of frustration across the board, that they also want to have responsible officiating in the league, but there are certain channels to go through on that. Um, and I think it was an important question to ask. I think it was an important question to bring up, although there wasn't exactly an answer or solution to it moving forward. But at the very least, it's not something that's unnoticed across
Well,
the league.
that's good because, like you said, the responsibility of the referees not only to call a fair and just game, but also to keep the players, the spectators, the coaching staff safe during the 90 minutes that a game takes place. That's the referee's responsibility. Another thing that I have a question about, Sandra, I'm hoping you have the answer for me. The NWSL Championship site location, usually it's predetermined. We know about it, especially at this point in the season. Like you mentioned, second half, we're winding down. We are understanding who are the top teams, the top 6 teams making the playoffs. Is there a championship site location?
Well, the commissioner was, very coy in saying that there is going to eventually be a predetermined site that's announced,
Oh,
because
good.
in all years prior, there's always been a predetermined site for the NWSL Championship final. Obviously, something like COVID-19 and the ongoing pandemic is probably more than likely clearly playing a role in something like this. We're coming off of a 2020 where there was not a regular season, and we're going into this 2021 where this season is still playing itself out, and players and coaches and traveling, we're still navigating all of that stuff. So she did say that there are a number of teams that are putting together proposals, because if there's a lot of interest from various clubs in hosting the actual NWSL final. So hopefully that an actual concrete answer will come out. But in the meantime, she did mention that in the coming weeks, in the forthcoming weeks soon, there will be actually something that is pinned down. So I guess they have to receive those proposals, and obviously they have to go through them with a fine tooth comb, and then maybe pick the best one that will showcase the biggest event for the league, which is the championship final. So there was a lot of great stuff to come out of the press conference that wasn't just maybe necessarily tied to some upsetting news right out of one specific club. There was a lot of different things, whether it's like the officiating or a potential answer on the upcoming NWSL final. And I took a bunch of the key points, from the conference, Lisa, and I went ahead and I wrote them up a little bit for CBS
Oh,
Sports.
thank you.
You're welcome. If people are looking for some key points and some key things that were discussed within this media conference from NWSL Commissioner Lisa Baird, they can find that on CBS Sports. But I mean, it's nice to be able to have a commissioner and be able to have a media availability and be able to field some questions. I personally, wish they happened a little more often, but you got to take them where you can get them. And it was nice to be able to have her take some of our questions.
Yeah, that is very nice. I understand you want all the answers and you want to talk to all the people in the positions that have the answers all the time. But hey, we got one media availability, which is good. I know that the league also speaks with broadcasters because I'm on that side of it. They host meetings with us, which is pretty nice. But more answers to come in the coming days. Check Twitter, follow Sandra on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, follow Attacking Third on Twitter because we're tweeting out the news and we're trying to give you guys updates as fast as we can and as best as we can given the information we have.
For sure. Another fun bit of news, though, something that I guess maybe we could sort of end our news segment on a bit of a more positive and actual concrete bit of news
Yes,
here coming from
please.
the league. A really cool initiative got announced, but in partnership with the NWSL Players Association and U.S. Soccer. It's highlighting a B license program. So the United States Soccer is presenting its first all-women B license course. So there are 20 active players and 4 former players who are participating and who are going to be invited in a modified mentorship program. So that is so exciting, and the fact that that is something that has been in the works for some times, because this doesn't something like this just doesn't get announced
Mm-hmm.
overnight after like 24 hours of planning. It just unfortunately happened to fall and drop in a very chaotic news cycle for the Washington Spirit and by extension the league. So this for me was probably one of the biggest bright spots of maybe the last 24 hours in the kind of wild news cycle that there has been. We did talk about that, in the previous episode when we only had a bit of limited information at the time regarding the Spirit and Burke, Lisa. We asked ourselves questions about some of these coaching positions because there's a lot that are going to come into play in the next coming season, whether it's the expansion clubs that are coming in California in 2022 or somebody out in Portland who needs to be assigned to that head coaching position in light of Mark Parsons departing at the end of the season to go coach the Netherlands women's team. So there's there's going to be some opportunity. There's going to be some seats to fill. In this league. So I loved seeing this bit of news to kind of close out the cycle for sure.
Yeah, a program that is looking to increase the number of female coaches in the United States. I'm always put me on that team. I am always for that, and you love to see that. And you mentioned it's been a long time coming, a long process. This is the third year that the NWSL and U.S. Soccer has partnered together. But usually, or the last 3 years, previous 2 years, it has been C license that they are available to give. And this is the first all women B license course, which is a higher level for those who are not in the refereeing world. It's a higher, more advanced level of refereeing. You can referee bigger competitions in higher level soccer. And this platform for players is huge because, as you guys know, you're watching this league, it goes all the time. These players don't have time to go to a course, and these courses are strenuous and they're long and you have to learn a lot. And although they're players at the highest level, there's still so much to learn about the nuances of refereeing. I will say I was a referee, Sandra, for a number of years as a child. I refereed from like U5, the little kiddos running around, up until adult leagues when I was like 15, 16. That was my job during the year as a referee.
Look at those skills.
You learn a lot on that side of it, and you have to see the game not as a player or as a coach, but rather as a very fair observer of the game, which can be difficult to do. So this opportunity is great. Hopefully we get some fantastic coaches out of this program, which I'm sure we will. And in the next few years, maybe the retired players or players, once they retire, they'll look to step into the NWSL coaching shoes. How fun would that be?
It would be super duper fun. Into it. Love to end out a new segment on some positivity there. So looking forward to that. Lisa, we've got a whole full slate of games to get through, though. So we've got to preview these matches, and we will do that right after a quick hydration break for the two of us. And we're going to go through these 5 matches and give you guys our picks. We'll be right back.
Sandra, I know we said hydration. However,
Are you cheating?
I can't lay off the coffee.
I blame the Olympics. I blame the Olympics. The Olympics made you hooked. They made you hooked on that caffeine. Oh boy,
Mhm.
5 games. And it's not just Saturday and Sunday. They're starting on Friday. We've got 3 full days, not full, but we've got 3 days coming up of matches. We've got Houston versus Washington on Friday. We've got Orlando versus Portland, Kansas City versus OL Reign on Saturday, Gotham versus Racing Louisville, North Carolina versus Chicago to close out things on Sunday. Let's go through these really quickly, Lisa. We got to kick things off on Friday. The one game that's happening, Houston Dash versus Washington Spirit. It's appropriate that we're chatting about this considering how we started out the top of this segment. What's going to come out of this game? Who are you picking in this one?
Yeah, so this is a good matchup. Remember, Houston coming off that 5-1 loss to OL Reign. But Dash has some players back, according to some social media posts that I saw. Rachel Daly is back. Sophie Schmidt is back. They have players rearing to go and score goals. And then Washington Spirit, a team that we talked about going through a lot right now. So if we're doing just picks, hard and fast picks, I'm giving this one to Houston. They have some Olympic stretch players back that were away for the international duty. They're back. They're ready to play. They're ready to score goals and be with their teammates. There's something about returning to your club and just ready to go. So I have Houston in this one.
I think that's fair. There's some, even honestly, quite frankly, even if it comes down to where these Olympians are returning and maybe they don't get starts or they come off the bench and they don't see a ton of time. There's just something about your players returning back into the mix that sort of gives you just an added boost heading into a game day. So
even having them in training, it just elevates the level. We've heard that time and time again from coaches when they have these international players, the training sessions just are increased. And the players that have been starting in place of those players, they want to keep those starting spots or at least continue to get significant minutes on the field. So the competition is just increased across the board. We're going to see that this weekend.
For sure. I don't blame you. I think going with Houston is a smart pick, quite frankly. But I don't know. This Spirit Club has had a tough week. There's a lot that's been going on. And then on top of that, they have the first game to kick off the weekend, and it's on the road. Houston's not an easy place to play in. But getting all your feelings out on the pitch on a soccer pitch is a good place to do it. So in the meantime, they do have an interim head coach. This is a team that has been playing together, for at least half a season already. Some of these players on the roster have been playing together for a significant amount of time already. So I think I might actually give the edge to Washington in this one. I think I want to see them come out here and get a result. I don't know if it's going to be a win, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they scrap their way to some type of result in Houston on this one. So I'm gonna go Washington in this one.
Okay, we'll split. I'll see you on Monday morning.
Right on. I'm into it. We're going right into Saturday. Looking ahead to this doubleheader, kicking things off is Orlando Pride versus Portland Thorns FC. We got two teams coming off of a win, going head to head, and first place team versus the fourth place team. Portland sitting in number 1 right now. Orlando, with their recent win against Chicago, boosted themselves up in the standings in fourth place. So this is going to be a fun one to sort of kick things off on this doubleheader on Saturday. Who you got in this one, Lisa?
This game I'm very, very excited for. We've touched on it. Becky Burley for Orlando. She's stepping in as the interim head coach right now, and she is excited to make a lot of changes, and the changes aren't just coming on the field. She's getting to know the players off the field, in the locker room. So because of that, and now that Becky Burley has a few more days of training under her belt, she got the first win with Orlando last week. I want to give Orlando a little bit of an edge. They have Marta back. They have a really strong, dynamic midfield. But like you mentioned, this Portland squad, they have not slowed down and they have not given up. And now with Olympics done and that stretch over, this one is tough for me. I am going to give the edge to Portland, but I think Orlando will get a goal. No matter what happens, Orlando will score. They just have too much firepower up top, and their defensive abilities in training the last few weeks, and even how they've approached their previous games now under Burley has been different defensively. They're a bit more organized, they're a bit more structured, and then they're looking to go on that really quick transition, and going up against a team like Portland Thorns, who is so organized offensively. Orlando will really need to be disciplined and then get in that quick transition. I do think Portland will win, but Orlando gets a goal.
Fair enough. I think I don't know. I know I said I didn't want to do this with Houston and Washington, but I really do think this one might be a draw. I really,
Oh,
really do. I think my pick is that this one could be a draw. I think both of these teams are coming off of wins, but they're coming off of a win that kind of broke a tough streak for them. You know, they had a tough Olympic stretch, whereas the Portland Thorns, they almost look to get stronger. With showing off their depth all across the bench, on all across the lines on the pitch. But Portland's going to be on the road again, similar to Houston. Orlando, Florida, not an easy place to play in for sure. And there has been something constant that we've seen on this Portland side. And while their attack has looked dynamic, there's been a lot of narrow scorelines for them when it comes to these victories. So Orlando has shown that they can be scrappy in a very narrow game. So I really do think that this one could come down to a draw. So I think I would like to maybe see Orlando continue a little bit of a win streak here for Becky Burley and kind of show what they've got and who they are under her current reign. But I really do think it's going to be maybe 1-1. Let's look ahead and close it out. We've got Kansas City NWSL versus OL Reign. OL Reign on the road to Kansas City, coming off of a huge, huge, huge win against Houston Dash. They got to be feeling good going up against the last place team in the league. Lisa, on paper, it kind of feels like this is maybe a little bit one-sided. Who do you got, and what are you going to see in this match?
I do feel it is one-sided, especially on paper, and you have to give this one to OL Reign, not only because they're playing Kansas City. Take Kansas City out of the equation. No matter who OL Reign was facing this week, they were going to come out hard in the attack. They have been on fire. They've constantly been building momentum and connecting their passes, getting rhythm. Hello, Bethany Balcer, 2 braces in 2 separate games. She's now has 4 goals on the season, right at the top of the leaderboard. The squad is coming together. Players like Les Sommer and Ziara King are finding themselves and finding their stride. You have to give this one to OL Reign, no matter who they're facing up against. And Bethany Balcer, fun fact stat about her, she leads the team in shots taken, and she has 4 goals. So that's pretty good for her, a player that had some ups and downs throughout this season, and now she's hitting her stride. So I have to give this to OL Reign. Sandra?
I'm with you 100% of the way, Lisa. And that's not just because I named Bethany Balcer to my NWSL Star Player Index this week on CBS Sports. Go check it out, where I rank a bunch of players, not so much in order, but I list them off for players who are having big games in the league, who are generating a lot of buzz throughout the league. And she's absolutely one of those players. For a whole 24 hours, Lisa, Bethany Balcer was the leader in goals for this entire league, a whole 24 hours before Sydney Leroux came against Chicago and had her say. So now that's the things that we're looking at right now, right? Now that we're fully in the swing of the second half of the season, things start to take shape a little bit. So we start looking at standings a little bit closer. We start looking at individual matches a little bit closer. Things like the golden race, we start looking at seeing who's got the goals. So she's definitely doing things for OL Reign. She's scoring on headers. She's scoring on the ground. That's a great striker to have in the final third for you. And then on top of that, it's all these other pieces around her. Somebody like
Mhm.
Jennifer Marlson, who's just been outstanding for this team after kind of settling in with them via the loan from Olympic Lyon, creating a bunch of being very, very active, creating a ton of chances for her teammates, watching somebody like Jess Fishlock starting to also create chances and collect goals herself. So it's hard to look at this on paper and go against OL Reign, and I'm not. So I think you and I are going to have to keep an eye on this one just in case we get proven wrong. And Kansas City NWSL, what a story. They could probably shock the entire league if they come out with a win on this one. So either way, if it goes either way, we're going to talk about it for sure. Let's look ahead to Sunday. Closing it out. We got a final doubleheader. We've got Gotham versus Racing New York, New Jersey Gotham FC versus Racing Louisville FC. Lisa, what are we going to see in this match? Who you got?
So this one was really tricky for me, Sandra. There's one every weekend that I get stumped on, and I have to second guess my gut reaction and go back and forth. When I looked at this initially, Gotham coming off a loss to North Carolina Courage, who is back. North Carolina's back. Their winning ways are back. And for Gotham, that game was different. It was a little bit difficult for them. Some injuries happening in that one. And for Racing Louisville, they're coming off a 3-1 win over Kansas City. So they have a lot of confidence. They have players that are doing really well, like Nadia Nadim, just to name one of them. Savannah McCaskill is doing really well as well for Racing Louisville. This one, I'm going to give it a draw. I am. I think that Racing Louisville has been doing better and better each week, and they're growing as a team. And I think Christy Holly is doing well with how he's organizing the team and the players that he has and playing to those personal strengths that he sees on the pitch, and that it could give Gotham a little bit of trouble. But I'm going with the draw on this game.
I think that's fair to go with. I know, Gotham is hosting and maybe they can have some of that home field to their advantage, but I'm not too sure. I mean, we talk about.
Historically, Gotham has done better on the road.
Yes, I'm about to say, I was just like, their record maybe isn't, what you would think it would be, at home. And we've talked a lot about this particular Olympic stretch, the end of it, where players are starting to integrate themselves back into teams. And for Racing, that's not necessarily the same scenario, but they have integrated somebody like a Nadia Nadim off of a midseason signing, and somebody who's just got this great mentality, this attacking mentality in the final third, and can really bring a lot of energy to this team while giving them different options on and off the ball. And something else has been happening, in this mid-season point that we are taking a look at and keeping an eye on is an injury bug. This is really the moment of the season where you take a little bit of a closer look at these injury reports on both sides of the pitch and sort of see what's happening and coming into play. So, Gotham FC still has had somebody like Paige Monahan nursing some things. They added Mitch Purse to that. We will see how that looks come Sunday. That could possibly change, but for now, that has been something that's been on the back burner for them. And those are really two key components to that team and when they're building their attack. And while Racing has struggled on things on the back line, you've got a Gotham side that has been pretty solid on their defense. So I don't blame you. I'm going to go with you, Lisa. I think this one's going to be a draw as well.
Wow, I love when we agree. I really do. It makes me happy.
It makes me happy too. Let's close it out. Let's see if we agree on this last one. We've got North Carolina Courage hosting Chicago Red Stars. It's going to be the second time these two teams meet up in the NWSL regular season. Who you got in this one, Lisa? What are you going to be looking for?
Oh gosh, this will be a good one to close out the weekend. I'm going to go North Carolina. I believe North Carolina is going to get this win. They are coming off the Gotham win from last week. They hit a bit of a rough patch during this Olympic stretch. They did. However, I believe that they are back. And they also played a Orlando team a few weeks ago that gave them a very different look under head coach Becky Burley that they weren't expecting. And I think that jolt to North Carolina gave them a little bit of a wake-up call throughout this season that you cannot expect teams in this league to not surprise you every week. That was like a double negative. Let me say that again. You must expect that the teams in this league will surprise you every week. I just like to make things a little more positive than all these negative knots. So that's how I'm going to.
I liked it both ways. I'm not going to lie.
Thank you. So the teams they're going to surprise you. And I believe that North Carolina forgot that over the last few weeks, and they thought that they could do the same old game plan against every opponent they play, and they can't. So now this week, going into this matchup against Chicago, a Chicago team that's also doing very well offensively, ups and downs throughout this, but the injury bug, like you mentioned, is back. And I believe North Carolina will take this one just based on what Chicago has been through, what North Carolina has been through, and how North Carolina has responded to the games that they've played most recently.
Yeah, for sure. I hate to do it. I hate to come on this show and have a Chicago White Sox shirt on and come in here and pick against Chicago. But when I'm looking at both of these teams, again, we're looking at players who are getting reintegrated with their teams and players who are going to be missing. And quite frankly, even without an actual concrete update on key players for Chicago like Morgan Gautrat and Danny Colaprico, I think it's maybe a safe assumption that at minimum they'll be on limited minutes, if not out altogether in this match, while somebody like North Carolina is probably going to be reintroducing Dabinya to their midfield. It's a tough, tall task. Last time these two teams met, they played to a narrow win for Chicago. It was a 1-0 win, and it was a win that really turned a lot of heads in the league. It was people were very impressed with how Chicago was able to sort of counteract North Carolina's typical box midfield and kind of negate it, really, and not make it a factor and limit this team to a historic one shot on goal, and walked away with the win that day. But a huge part of that was because of a player like Morgan Gautrat in the midfield. So I'm not too sure what that's going to look like in this one. And I got to say, with having a player like Dabinya at your disposal, having the return of Jess McDonald, to the lineup after dealing with illness, those are all huge assets for this North Carolina side. So these two teams have historically played close. And while I would love to see Chicago scrap one out here and walk away with some type of result, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes North Carolina's favor, but I would love to come back and recap this and be wrong. So we'll just leave it at that, Lisa. Let's look forward a little bit. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back Monday for an NWSL recap. We will also be with you all along the way for any additional news that drops across the league, or whatever it is, whether it's more information about coaching, whether it's more information about investigations, whether it's about, a location for the NWSL final. We'll be here to help you guys cover it. I want to thank everybody, as always, for listening to us. A quick reminder to please follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your shows. Please go ahead and leave us a 5-star review with a question, and if you leave us a 5-star review with a question, we will answer it on the episode. So, go ahead and tickle our brains with whatever you got there. We just want to let you know that we're also available as video. So please subscribe to us on YouTube. Just visit youtube.com/attacking third. And we will be back on Monday with an NWSL recap. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.